Hey, math tutor here. There are five FRQs that you must know for the AP exam. Like I'd say there's a 99% chance that these FRQs will be on the exam this year or on the exam any year. Series, right? The series FRQ is on the exam every year since 2017. Yeah, but even before 2017, it's always question number six, and it's always focused primarily on Taylor series. Now, almost every year, there's a part about error. In fact, the only year since 2017 where there wasn't a part about error was last year, actually, 2025. And then there's often a part where you have to like calculate radius or interval convergence, and that generally requires the ratio test. So this could kind of be a long question, especially if it's interval convergence, because then you have to test the endpoints, right? This was on the exam last year. It was question number six. So I will predict, I don't think this will be controversial. This will be on the exam again, and it will be question number six. Polar or parametric slash vector. Not both, one or the other, right? That's how it is every year. And it's almost always question number two. The only year it wasn't question number two was 2018. It was polar that year. And for some reason, they made a question number five. So people always want to know which one will be on the exam this year, polar or parametric slash vector, and no one knows. So you need to prepare for the possibility of either one, right? So for example, polar was on the exam last year, but that was the first time it was on the exam since 2019. So a lot of people assumed like last year it would be parametric slash vector because that's what it had been so many years in a row, but it was polar. I even heard of some students who didn't really prepare to see a polar FRQ. They didn't practice polar FRQs a lot. So don't be one of those students, right? Like prepare for the possibility of either one. Here's a little bit more detail about polar. So there's always a part about area, and that will require an integral, right? That integral is weird. Like you can't really calculate it by hand in this course just because like the techniques required to do that integral are generally beyond the scope of this course. So you're expected to use your calculator for that integral. Remember, this is number two on the exam generally. So it's going to be a calculator question, right? Most recent example of polar was last year, question number two. Okay, parametric slash vector. This is focused on particle motion. And there's always a part about speed and total distance, which means you're going to do at least one integral, right? Because the total distance formula literally has an integral in it. So similar to polar, use your calculator for that. Most recent example of parametric slash vector was 2 years ago, question number two. So I predict this will be on the exam, and this will be question number two. Now, I'd be remiss if I did not mention there is a type of FRQ that kind of isn't a type of FRQ. Let me explain. I like to call it BC randomness. Yeah, it's more like the absence of a type, right? But it's just random topics, kind of unpredictable, but it is on the exam typically, and it is question five typically. So it was on the exam last year, question number five. Half the FRQ was about series for some reason. In fact, there was even error on the exam, on that question, Lagrange error. Also, I've seen Euler's method in this question. Actually, yeah, Euler's method was in the question last year in part D. I've seen arc length, I've seen integration by parts. Yeah, it's just random BC only topics. Most recent example, as I said last year, question number five. So I predict it will be on the exam this year, question number five. Now, before we go any further, I do need to point something out. Okay, so there are certain FRQs that are like the BC FRQs, and they are six, five, and two, the ones we filled out. So the other FRQs, four, three, and one, these are AB FRQs. Like let me be clear. Six, five, and two have BC unique topics in them, right? But four, three, and one do not have BC unique topics in them. Four, three, and one only have like topics that are shared between A, B, and BC. So I guess this raises the question, well, of the FRQ types that are shared between A, B, and BC, which ones are more likely to be on the exam? There are certain types, graph. There has been a graph question every year on this exam. And I'm not just talking about any question with a graph. No, I'm talking about like the graph question. This is famous. There are shapes like triangles and semicircles and squares on the graph, and inevitably you have to calculate the area of them. And they have you like find relative extrema, absolute extrema. They really love to ask you to find absolute extrema, by the way. So this is a big one. And generally that requires like candidates test or probably most of the time. So yeah, this could be a long question as well. I guess kind of like the series question. And they also will have you write sentences. You will see like explain your reasoning, give a reason for your answer, justify your answer. Most recent example was last year, question number 4. There's also a table question, not a table question, the table question. Every year, well, almost every year, this has been on the exam. I think the one weird year was 2019 where it wasn't on the exam. There's always a part about Riemann sums or trapezoidal sums. There's often a part about average rate of change, and there's often a part where you have to invoke IVT or MVT. This was on the exam last year as well. It was question number 3. So I think we did it. I think that's all 5, right? I said series, polar, parametric slash vector, the graph question, and the table question. Yep. So, you know, you can't predict anything with certainty. We're not going to say 100%. So we're going to say 99% chance that these FRQs will be on the exam. By the way, honorable mention to BC randomness, right? Like, I mean, I didn't include it in this list because it's not like an FRQ type, like I said before, but it's on the exam a lot. So notice I didn't tell you like where table would be or where graph would be in the order, right? So like maybe table could be number 1 and graph could be number 3. That's a possibility. That raises the question like, well, what's going to go in this final spot, you know? Or maybe table could be number 3 and graph could be number 4. Yeah, so you can't really predict it. Table and graph kind of shift around from year to year. But that raises the question, right? What could go in this final spot? So that's the last thing I'll tell you before I end this video. There are 2 FRQs that are most likely to go in like the final spot. Differential equations. So this FRQ involves separation of variables every year, right? And they'll often ask you to create a tangent line to calculate an approximation. And then you have to figure out if it's like an overestimate or an underestimate. And also, I need to mention, so they used to have students like create a slope field. If we go like really far back in the past, more recently, they were having students draw a curve through a slope field. Nowadays, they're not doing that like at all because it has to do with the exam being like, a hybrid digital exam now. Like, they're just not going to give you like graph paper to do a question like this. They're not going to give you a grid. So they're definitely not going to expect you to like draw a graph that's going to be graded or something. If I had to assign a percentage to like how likely this would be on the exam, I'm saying only 40%. It's crazy the other ones were 99%, but this one's only 40. And yeah, most recent time it was on the exam was 2024, question number 3. And in the final FRQ, we will talk about rate in, rate out. Some people like to call it this. Yeah, so there could be either a rate in, a rate out, or there could be both. Like if you want to see an example of both, 2019 question number 1 comes to mind, which is about fish. By the way, I would show you all of these FRQs in this video, but like I'm not trying to like, get into like copyright issues and stuff. So this is always a calculator question. So like if it was going to go in that final spot, the final spot would have to be number 1, right? Right, right. Like the final spot couldn't be 3 or 4 because those are not calculator spots. And they do typically ask you to find an absolute extremum. 30% is what I would say as the likelihood of this appearing on the exam. Most recent example, 2022, question number 1. All right, so your main takeaway from the video should be 5 FRQs you must know. 99% chance that these will be on the exam. Series, polar, parametric slash vector, the graph question and the table question. If you have any questions for me, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'll also put like sources and links in the description. But yeah, thanks for watching.